Let's step into this ballroom, crystal light and quiet jazz. It's the kind of space where wealth never has to shout. It just sat there in tailored jackets and gleaming gold cufflinks. In the fake, practiced laughter, echoing over jokes that simply weren't funny. But hidden beneath the soft music and the polite murmurs. Some guys in the far corner made what they considered a harmless joke. They shoved a single dad toward a table where an outcast woman sat alone. Her hands gripped her champagne glass way too tight. Cruel whispers drifted across the floor. Two failures, a perfect match. They both heard the insult. But one of them was about to show this entire room what real compassion looks like. Ryan Walker was the sort of guy who never chased the spotlight. He stepped into every room exactly the same way, quietly, hands ready to help out. Always scanning for what was broken rather than personal gain. At 29, he carried a heavy stillness most guys his age hadn't earned yet. He stood 6'2", shoulders broad from years of hard labor. His face was clean and sharp but never looked angry. He kept his dark brown hair short. He had on a basic sharply ironed charcoal dress shirt. The kind you iron yourself, knowing those tiny habits keep your whole world from completely collapsing. He was only at this charity gala because of work, not as some wealthy donor. His hotel, where he managed maintenance, actually set up the logistics for the whole night. His boss tossed him an extra ticket and told him to go enjoy himself. Ryan nearly left the ticket sitting on his desk. You and I know it wasn't about fitting into high society. It was that he stopped judging people by fancy zip codes and bank accounts 3 years ago. That was the night his wife Claire never came home from the hospital. Claire was only 31 years old. Tough, hilarious, and stubbornly positive in a way Ryan teased her for but deeply needed. She checked in to deliver their second baby, a little girl they already named. The delivery went terribly wrong. Her heart failed fast, leaving absolutely no room for a second chance. Their baby didn't make it. Ryan drove home alone at 4 in the morning, an empty car seat in back, mocking a future that shattered into pieces while he wasn't even looking. He still had his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. She had blonde curls that bounced whenever she ran and a laugh so big it actually embarrassed her when it happened inside quiet rooms. She dragged around a soft cloth rabbit named Mr. Bunny every day. She held onto that toy since she first learned to grab things. Lily was his reason for waking up, why he ironed that shirt. She was his everything. 3 years later, he kept going, surviving inside a life that often felt like it belonged to a total stranger. We see his real character with the hotel staff, the housekeeping crew. The night guards and porters respected him, but not because he was their boss. It was because he knew their names, asked about their kids, and arrived early. And he never once turned anyone away for needing to ask a question twice. The wealthy guests completely ignored him, and that was fine. I had one strict rule I kept repeating to my daughter Lily since she could talk. When an entire room turns their back on somebody, I would tell her, "You be the very last person standing beside them." I always meant for it to be her life lesson. I honestly never expected the night would arrive so quickly where I had to prove it myself. That evening, I slipped the gala ticket into my pocket and kissed Lily right on her forehead. She pressed Mr. Bunny into my hands for a second, like a good luck charm, before snatching the rabbit back and telling me I looked incredibly handsome. I smiled at that. I just didn't realize yet that she was completely right. Madison Hart showed up to the charity gala exactly on time. In a ballroom full of elite guests who always show up late, that alone spoke volumes. She was 27 years old and the chief executive officer of the Hartwell Foundation, a massive nonprofit group funding children's hospitals and local domestic violence shelters, plus college scholarships for over 10 years before Madison ever stepped up to lead it. With her calling the shots, the foundation's charity reach nearly doubled. But none of that mattered to anyone in that room. What the room actually noticed was her dress. Floor-length champagne satin, elegant without screaming for attention, and the way Madison carried herself with the perfect posture of someone who realized years ago that high society would always be watching. And she chose to give them absolutely nothing to criticize. You and I both know the kind of beauty that makes people uncomfortable. Soft waves of dark chestnut hair, striking cheekbones, and dark, incredibly sharp, intelligent eyes. And tonight, heavily guarded. Just 3 months ago, Madison was engaged to Garrett Ellison, the golden boy of a famous Chicago lawyer. They were engaged for 14 months. The lavish wedding was only 8 weeks away. Then Garrett broke it off, not behind closed doors, not quietly. But he ended it the brutal way people do when they simply do not care if they break you. He started dating a state senator's daughter well before they even announced the split. Gossip magazines ran the cheating scandal before Madison could even find the strength to warn her own mom. The tabloid headlines were absolutely brutal. They called her a cold, loveless CEO. The woman who had everything, except a partner to come home to. They say she read every piece of trash, put her phone down, and just went straight to work. She learned a long time ago that having a public breakdown was a luxury a woman like her couldn't afford. But keeping that mask on cost her. Those harsh months of gossip and whispers. And the way I saw people stare just a bit too long when she walked in, hunting for any visible scars. Without ever agreeing to it, her life turned into cheap public drama. Something the elites fed on from afar, treating her total heartbreak like it was just evening entertainment. She didn't know a single soul at her assigned table tonight. That was completely on purpose. I watched her pick a chair on the absolute fringe, far from the heavy hitters and wealthy donors. Just sitting there to check the box as a sponsor. And slip out before getting trapped in conversations that always circled right back to the one detail everyone really wanted to ask. She slowly raised her champagne glass. She locked her eyes on the distant stage, watching the string quartet play something painfully slow and cautious, pretending she was alone. We've all been there. She convinced herself she was fine, just as she had for 93 days straight. You and I know true kindness starts quietly. The men clustered by the bar when one spotted Ryan standing alone. He was nursing water, just observing the luxury party the way he always did. Quietly, judging absolutely nobody. The man pointing was Douglas, a mid-level event planner who vaguely knew Ryan from the hotel and had drank enough bourbon to make those awful choices that look so much worse the next morning. He leaned over to his buddy, whispering a joke that made the whole group crack up. Putting the hotel maintenance guy next to the scandalized woman from the front page news. Two outcasts, one table, they were not hiding their mockery. Two guys strolled over, patting Ryan on the back with that fake, loud friendliness of people who decide to use you for a punchline without bothering to ask. One yelled, loud enough for everyone, that the empty seat beside the disgraced Madison Hart was practically screaming his name. The cruel laughter that followed was you and I have seen this kind of casual cruelty performed. Casual enough that nobody feels personally to blame for the pain. Ryan heard the joke. He knew exactly what it meant. Across the luxury ballroom, hiding at an edge table, Madison heard every single word of it. She froze completely. You learn to stop moving when the whole world turns your pain into cheap entertainment. She sat up perfectly straight, fingers gripping the stem of her wine glass so tightly. Ryan stared right at her table. He saw a woman abandoned by everyone, shoulders forced back, face blank, and he recognized something right away. It was not her famous name or that viral scandal. He saw that crushing, heavy exhaustion of someone turned into a public spectacle when they just wanted to hide. He had looked in the mirror enough times to spot that exact trauma in another person. He stepped away from those men, showing no anger, making no big dramatic speech. He just walked off the way a good man leaves a situation he refuses to join. Choosing to stand with the outcast, he walked to her table. He pulled back the empty chair and he sat down. He offered her the calm attention of a man who knows that true kindness means sitting with someone the whole world has turned away. I am so sorry, he told her, for how they acted. It was completely wrong. Madison looked at him. She waited for the punchline. She assumed this guy just wanted something. Months of brutal public backlash had taught her to brace for the trap before anyone finished speaking. But there was absolutely no trap on Ryan Walker's face. There was only simple, brave decency, the kind of grace that only appears in darkness. She stayed quiet for a second. She just stared at him. And for the first time since her world crashed, you and I can understand why she finally felt human. He said his name was Ryan. He explained he ran maintenance for the hotel 2 blocks down. He helped wire the event space tonight and just happened to score an extra ticket. He shared this fact without any shame. She noticed he never shrank himself down or over-explained his life. Here was a man completely at peace with exactly who he was. She softly told him her name was Madison. While everyone shunned her, he nodded, calling it a real pleasure. Then, showing real mercy, he ignored the broken engagement, the brutal tabloid headlines, and the heavy burden of running a massive foundation at 27. Instead, he simply asked if she had eaten anything. She blinked. She really had to think about it. "I honestly haven't," she whispered. He quietly waved down a passing waiter, pointing to the silver tray. No grand performance. He made no snide remarks. He simply made sure she had some warm food in front of her. Such a small, quiet act of care, it broke her defenses completely open. We have all seen fake social climbing, but they spoke slowly, totally free from performance. He told her all about his 6-year-old daughter. How she had this wild lion mane when it wasn't brushed. Totally obsessed with drawing little smiley faces on everything, even his work lunchbox. He mentioned she always saved the final bite of her food for somebody else. He confessed he never figured out if he actually taught her that empathy, or if she was just born into this harsh world already knowing how to care. Madison actually laughed at that, a real sudden beautiful sound. The rare kind that sneaks out before you can even decide to hold it back. She quickly pressed her fingers to her lips, clearly startled by herself. She hadn't genuinely laughed like that in months. She never realized she was actively keeping count. Ryan spoke about his kid the way men discuss what they love most, with extreme care, not cheap sentimentality. He used the deep attention of a man who memorizes every detail because those details matter. He told her Lily had once given her winter coat to a freezing classmate at just 4 years old, and spent the entire afternoon pretending she wasn't actually freezing cold herself. She was shaking, he said, but she wore this massive, proud smile. Proudest I have ever been of another human being. Madison found herself truly listening, ignoring the party's toxic glare for the first time. Without asking for credit, Ryan quietly reached over and swapped her nearly empty glass of water for his full one. She never asked. She hadn't even realized her own glass was dry. Then, as a passing waiter struggled to push through the crowded luxury tables, Ryan casually stood up, sliding his heavy chair back to clear the way. The tired waiter thanked him. He just nodded, sitting back down to talk without missing a single beat, completely unaware of his own grace. Watching him, she realized his genuine kindness was completely effortless. It wasn't a fake show, it wasn't some calculated strategy. You and I see it now, just pure honest behavior from a man who had been paying attention to everyone around him for so long that kindness became his default setting. All around them, the rich crowd kept clinking crystal glasses and whispering their shallow gossip about money and status. A few cruel guests glared at their tables, silently judging her past. Madison noticed none of their judgment. She just watched Ryan Walker explaining with total deadpan seriousness how his daughter once tried to mail a care package to the moon because she had figured somebody up there might be horribly lonely. And you know what? For the first time in 93 days, Madison Hart felt truly safe. The message dinged right after 9 o'clock. Ryan's screen flashed with a text from home. A short sorry note. Lily had caught a low fever. The little girl wasn't scared, but she'd asked for her father 3 times. The sitter tried apple juice, a cool towel, and that tiny fan Lily claimed sounded just like falling rain. None of those tricks worked. Lily just sat there on the sofa, clutching Mr. Bunny in her lap, politely explaining she really needed Ryan. Across town, Ryan read the text and stood. "I am so sorry," he told Madison. "I need to go check on my daughter." "Is she okay?" "Probably," he replied, "but she's asking for me, so." He didn't need to explain anything. You and I know it wasn't a polite exit. Madison, shunned by everyone here tonight, recognized the raw truth of a father prioritizing his 6-year-old over this elite crowd. "Good night," she told him. She watched him navigate the judgmental, whispering ballroom with that exact same steady, calm purpose he arrived with. The rare comfort she had felt tonight slowly slipped away. She reached for her champagne. In this ruthless room, tonight was just a cold transaction. They only judged her past. She felt stupid for forgetting that, even briefly. She was silently practicing her defensive opening remarks when a tiny, pure voice broke her heavy isolation. "Daddy, is that the lady you were sitting with?" Ryan had come back, with company. Holding his hand was a little girl wearing a pale yellow sweater and leggings covered in tiny printed stars. Her dirty blonde curls were a little damp around her face. Tucked into her other arm was an old cloth rabbit, clearly well-loved with one squished ear. Its fuzzy chest was worn completely smooth from years of constant childhood hugs. When those innocent eyes locked onto Madison, they didn't blink. "She was outside," Ryan muttered gently, sounding half apologetic about the interruption. "The babysitter brought her after the fever broke. I was already coming back inside." "I hope that is okay." "Of course," Madison replied and honestly meant it. She crouched down a bit to match the little girl's height. "Hi there," she whispered. "I am Madison." Lily stared at her for a long, serious second. "You look really pretty," Lily whispered. "But kind of sad." Right away, Ryan tried to gently change the subject. That classic parent reflex, trying to smooth over the blunt edges of a kid's pure honesty. But Madison gently raised her hand. "No, it is okay," she told him. Her voice dropped slightly deeper. "She is absolutely right." Lily glanced up at her dad. He gave a tiny nod, confirming some secret language only those two shared. Then Lily took 2 steps forward, reached her little arms up, and offered Mr. Bunny. "You can hold him," she offered softly. "I always hold him when I am sad." "It helps." The entire judgmental ballroom seemed to let out a breath. The jazz music played. Let's pause here. While snobs kept gossiping, this exact spot shifted so heavily that nearby guests went totally silent. Drawn toward the little girl and the outcast woman in the gold dress, practically spellbound. Madison took the stuffed rabbit with both hands, incredibly gently, holding it like someone receiving a truly priceless, life-saving gift. For 3 full seconds, she just held it. Then her tough armor, the brave face she faked through 93 days of brutal tabloid scandals, just broke apart, quietly and entirely. Her eyes filled up, her jaw clenched. She pressed her lips tight and finally cried, without any drama. Just silent tears. True kindness stands when others turn away. I watched her weep, crying the way you do when holding back the world's judgment, until an unexpected act of grace finally lets you break. Little Lily climbed into the seat right beside her. The child didn't say a word. She just sat there, small but resolute, mirroring how her dad had bravely chosen to sit with the outcast an hour before. 20 minutes later, the gala's master of ceremonies finally stepped to the podium. Before our keynote remarks, he announced, "I would like to take a moment to recognize this event's primary benefactor. The Hartwell Foundation has contributed almost $20 million to our cause tonight. These funds will directly expand pediatric health services right across the entire metro region, funding vital emergency shelter programs, and establishing college pathways for youth in underserved communities." He paused. "Our deepest gratitude to the Foundation's chief executive, someone's, who led this mission with extraordinary vision. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Madison Hart." The loud applause crashed through the gala like a wave. Around the table where Madison sat, with Lily tucked tight against her side, Mr. Bunny still carefully held in both hands, a heavy, deeply uncomfortable silence suddenly fell. Those wealthy men who were mocking her by the bar earlier suddenly rearranged their stunned faces. The high society women who had been gossiping just stared at the floor in shame. Madison stood up slowly. She smoothed the front of her gown. She looked down at Lily, whispering something quiet that made the little girl nod. She gently placed Mr. Bunny down on the empty seat. Walking to the stage, she grabbed the microphone, completely abandoning the formal speech she had actually planned. She just stood there, a young woman in a champagne dress facing a ballroom full of elite, judgmental people. You and I saw it. She stared down the crowd who spent all evening shunning her like some headline. "This philanthropy foundation has been my life's work," she said. Her voice remained perfectly steady. "And I came here tonight prepared to discuss the numbers, our programs, financial projections, and the new partnerships. I will get to all of that," she paused. "But first I have to share something that isn't in my notes." The room went dead silent. Tonight at this gala I was reminded of a truth I almost let myself forget. Another pause. "I heard a lot of laughter tonight. Some was kind, and some of it," she didn't point. She didn't name names, was the cruel kind. She looked toward Ryan and Lily's table. "The only person in this entire room who actually treated me like a human being. Not a scandal, not a cautionary tale or a joke, was a maintenance manager here on a spare ticket. Her voice never wavered. He had no idea who I was. He didn't know what our charity does. He saw a woman shunned by the world, and he chose to sit down and just be kind. A beat, and then his 6-year-old daughter gave me her stuffed rabbit. A strange sound echoed through the crowd, not quite laughter but not quite tears. Something right in between. $20 million, Madison stated quietly. And the one thing that almost broke me tonight and then healed me cost absolutely nothing at all. She didn't finish her closing remarks with any anger. You and I know this room will remember that forever. She had every right to hurl the evening's cruel humiliation back at the hypocrites who caused it. She had choices, but she used none of them for more cruelty. Instead, she detailed the Charity Foundation's mission with calm, steady grace. She described the pediatric hospital ward they finished last spring. She spoke of the local women's shelter, that south wing now offering safe beds to 40 more families than the year prior. She highlighted 63 bright young people who had reached college last year because someone chose to open a door instead of slamming it. Stepping off that stage, she walked back through the clapping high society crowd. She completely bypassed the table of wealthy men who had mocked her. She offered no smug glares, denying them the triumphant reaction they likely expected. She walked right back to her table, sat facing Ryan, and held out Mr. Bunny to Lily, who took the rabbit with the absolute gravity of a vital business deal. "Thank you," Madison told little Lily. He helped. Lily stroked the toy once, completely content. You and I know what happens next. A silent reckoning swept the ballroom. Nobody screamed. Not a single public confrontation happened. But true decency had forced that cruel crowd to gaze into a mirror of undeniable honesty. The brutal kind that shatters comfortable illusions and reveals undeniable truths. And several guests, trapped in that sudden discomfort, finally recognized their sheer cruelty, feeling the heavy shame of shunning her. Ryan completely ignored those elites. His focus stayed on Lily, adjusting Mr. Bunny snugly into her little arm with absolute pure dedication. Like that stuffed toy's safety mattered far more than any high society drama. He stayed completely silent throughout her brave speech. He never once waved or tried to pull the spotlight away from her. He just anchored that table, offering quiet kindness when the room turned its back. That steadfast, unconditional presence was exactly why Madison's fingers shook while reaching for her water glass. 4 days passed. At 11 a.m. she stepped right into the Hartwell Continental Hotel lobby. She was not attending another fancy gala. Gripping 2 hot coffees, she politely asked the front desk if Ryan Walker might be available. 5 minutes later, he descended from the utility room, still wearing his everyday work clothes. He caught sight of some dark grease on his knuckles, subtly wiping it away on his worn shirt hem. Shocked to find her there, he stammered, "You really didn't need to." "I know," she murmured softly, offering him one of the warm cups. They settled down into a quiet alcove near the eastern wall, far from the rushing crowds, where Madison finally spoke the raw truth. She admitted that brutal night at the luxury gala had deeply shifted her entire perspective. Something she was actively trying to process, yet she firmly believed in. Let's be honest, facing confusing things head-on always beats waiting for them to fade. For the past 3 months, she had secretly started accepting a very dark, quiet reality. The painful way anyone accepts unspoken truths they hide, believing every single guy who ever gave her any attention was just hunting for her wealth or mocking her ruined past. She survived 93 long days walking through those crowded, elite social circles while feeling completely shunned, far more invisible than she ever thought was possible. She confessed that the very evening Garrett finally broke off their engagement. "You and I know society is cruel." After 4 numb days, she finally broke down. She hid in a dark parking garage at 11 p.m. She couldn't risk being seen, knowing the public was just waiting for any excuse to mock her. True kindness just quietly listens. When she finished, he stood by her, sharing his pain over losing Claire. Not the dramatic funeral days. Not the blur of family crowding the apartment with too much food, offering shallow comfort while entirely missing the depth of his broken reality. He spoke of the brutal silence that followed. Everyone else moved on, leaving him alone in an empty space, desperately relearning how to simply exist again. How to cook a dinner. How to simply watch television. How to stand staring at the cereal. just standing in the grocery aisle, totally paralyzed. Claire used to buy the groceries, so he never actually knew which brand they even kept at home. He shared the raw isolation, the deep loneliness of being a person society merely pitied, the way everyone avoided his eyes. I completely stopped being a human being to them, he admitted softly. I was just a sad situation. Madison set down her coffee cup. Yes, she whispered. That is exactly what it feels like. They shared that safe haven for 40 minutes. Let's look at this moment. When she finally stood up, she hesitated right there. I'd like to talk again, the outcast told him, if that is okay. Ryan didn't turn away like the others. Yeah, he answered. I would really like that. But the cruel gossip dropped on Tuesday. A tiny piece in an entertainment column, just vague, nasty rumors. But sharp enough to prove someone watched the shunned CEO leaving the Hartwell Continental twice. The world quickly spun a toxic narrative to mock her further. By Thursday, the vicious story infected 3 more media outlets. By Saturday, it gathered serious momentum. The kind that builds whenever society finds another excuse to tear down a fallen woman. Billionaire CEOs rebound, maintenance man or sneaky master plan. Madison Hart uses hotel staff, trading down or just starting over? Ryan found those brutal headlines Saturday morning. Standing in the silent kitchen at 6 a.m., while his daughter slept safely, he carefully read every cruel word written about her. He placed his phone face down on the cold counter. He brewed coffee. He packed Lily's lunch for the week. He slowly folded the laundry sitting ignored in the basket since Wednesday. Then he sat at the quiet kitchen table just thinking, wondering what standing by this public outcast would actually cost Lily. For 3 whole years, he kept his daughter shielded from any public mess. Not to protect his own pride, but for a deeply fundamental reason. His young Lily lost her mother. At just 3 years old, she realized the universe could violently shift without warning, ruthlessly stealing away the people who matter most in life. Ever since, Ryan built their entire world around one single mission, giving his daughter a reality that felt perfectly steady, completely trustworthy, and entirely safe. He texted Madison that very evening, brief but deeply honest. It was the hardest thing he had written in a very long time. He explained the toxic media circus terrified him, specifically concerning what it meant for Lily. You and I know cowards run. He chose honest transparency instead. He wouldn't just abandon a shunned woman. She showed him vulnerability, so she deserved truth. Alone again, Madison read his rare, genuine kindness in the dim light. She absorbed every single cruel word. Beneath that realization, she felt a familiar, devastating collapse, the exact crushing isolation she'd known in that cold parking garage. That awful feeling of being a toxic burden to others. She stayed totally silent. She sat in that lonely darkness, studying her isolation with brutal honesty. But she was a woman who had paid a steep price to learn the difference between harsh reality and the cruel stories we invent. She forced herself to face the truth. Those vicious headlines weren't Ryan's doing. This ruthless public mockery wasn't his choice. And his deep hesitation wasn't him just abandoning her. It was merely the heavy caution of a deeply responsible, careful man. Which was exactly why she had braved that judgmental hotel lobby with 2 cups of coffee in the very first place. She finally replied, I understand. Can we talk? 3 weeks later, you and I arrive at the Foundation's winter benefit. A luxurious, exclusive affair inside a restored downtown hall, dripping with quiet wealth and very loud whispers. 200 elite guests, supposedly gathered to celebrate local charity work. Madison bravely invited Ryan and Lily. He almost stayed away completely. He had gently explained that he didn't want his presence fueling the vicious gossip aimed at ruining Madison's important big night. Madison quietly accepted his painful choice. But little Lily, who had only heard about the glamorous party in passing, the way adults usually dismiss things around kids, instantly fired off 4 rapid, innocent questions about the fancy event. Was the building pretty? And was there food? Could her toy rabbit come, and why weren't they going? Ryan had no good excuse for abandoning Madison to the wolves. They walked in just before 7. Lily wore a lovely navy dress and held on to her beloved toy, Mr. Bunny, completely unbothered by the judgmental stares of the high society crowd around them. Ryan stood tall in a dark jacket and crisp shirt. The luxurious party seemed deceptively polite. A local student choir began to sing, opening the extravagant charity gala event. Lily leaned forward in her velvet chair during the beautiful performance within. Expression of pure awe that finally made one cynical socialite next to her smile. But halfway through, a slick reporter hunting for scandal slithered over to Ryan, eager to exploit Madison's completely ruined reputation. The cruel interrogation began. Polite at first, then quickly turning into vicious, headline-baiting public mockery. Are you and disgraced Madison Hart secretly involved? Is she using you to fix her image? Is this sad single-dad charity angle just a cheap PR stunt? We know that last question was meant to destroy. It landed hard. Ryan felt that urge. That instinct to flee the sneering crowd, to hide in the shadows and protect his innocent daughter from the ugly spotlight. He glared at the smirking journalist. He glanced down at little Lily and Mr. Bunny watching this cruel room with the calm, serious focus of a kid realizing someone she cares about is being relentlessly bullied. Then he chose real kindness, the kind that stands with the shunned. He marched straight toward the shocked coordinator by the main stage. And we watch him gently ask for the microphone to defend her honor. Madison watched him approach the stage. Surrounded by judgment, she froze completely. Let's look at this together. Ryan faced that hostile crowd without notes, completely unpolished. He fumbled the microphone at first, keeping his distance, then steadied himself and began speaking. My name is Ryan Walker, he announced. I work in hotel maintenance. I am a single father. I am standing here tonight because Madison Hart is truly one of the kindest people I have met in the last 3 years. It needs to be said to a room of people who judge her past but clearly do not know her actual heart. He paused. She funds children's hospitals. She pays for safe houses for women who have nowhere left. She backs scholarships for orphans who still find the courage to keep pushing forward. His tone remained perfectly calm, but none of that makes the evening news. The media only cares if she leaves a building in tears. He paused again. My little girl recently asked why grown adults enjoy mocking people who are already suffering. Glancing at Lily, he faced the wealthy crowd again. I still cannot give her a good answer. The elite crowd sat in stunned silence. I only know how I would want someone to treat her. Slowly, Madison stepped right up to the stage edge. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Ryan, facing her harsh critics together. She did not grab the microphone. There was absolutely no need. Her raw expression communicated everything his brave words had left unspoken. The profound relief of an outcast who had been standing totally alone against the world, realizing she finally had a true friend by her side. Then little Lily slid down from her fancy chair in the third row. She marched up the 3 short steps to the stage with careful, unhurried purpose, Mr. With her stuffed bunny safely tucked under one arm, she crossed right over to Madison and held the little toy high up. You can borrow him again, she whispered. If you need to. Madison tightly pressed a hand over her trembling mouth, inhaling sharply. Crouching down, she pulled Lily into a fierce hug. The child squeezed her back with that total, wholehearted commitment only innocent kids can give. Both little arms wrapped tight, face buried in Madison's shoulder. You can feel the shift. The judgmental room finally softened. Not quite applause, not just yet. Just a heavy, meaningful shift in the quality of the silence. The kind of silence, meaning true compassion, just broke through their arrogance, and every single person there recognized it was demanding they finally change too. In the months following that night, several major things changed. The foundation launched a fresh support network for single parents, fighting their way through harsh financial instability and terrible grief, plus a dedicated safety network for women who had been publicly disgraced by ruthless media attacks tearing into their private lives. These programs were extremely practical, carefully crafted entirely with input from the shunned communities themselves. Madison announced them without any flashy fanfare at a very small press briefing on a quiet Wednesday morning. Ryan stepped up as an informal community liaison for her foundation, a helpful position that lacked a title initially, until the massive impact of his kindness demanded one. He bravely bridged the difficult gap between her charity programs and the forgotten neighborhoods those programs were actually meant to save. He succeeded the same way he did everything else, by actually paying attention to the overlooked, constantly asking questions, and refusing to leave until the solution truly worked. Here is our takeaway. That winter, Lily simply declared Madison was the lady who borrowed Mr. Bunny, and that this mattered because only truly kind people borrowed, Mr. Bunny. Ryan smiled and let it be. You and I should fast forward a few months to a quiet evening in Ryan's small kitchen. The exact kitchen with a crooked cabinet door he had meant to fix for 2 years. A space where a cracked window let in the warm orange glow of Chicago evenings. Lily sat at the table with crayons, drawing what she proudly declared was a horse, a very kind one. Madison sat across from the little girl, resting her chin, asking serious questions about this friendly horse. Ryan stood at the stove while the apartment smelled like garlic and warm food. No flashy crystal chandeliers here, no fancy jazz quartet playing. No cruel crowd judging them. Instead, we witnessed the beautiful weight of a real life that blossomed from choosing kindness. Ryan once told his daughter, when the whole room turns away from someone, you be the last person still standing right beside them. He originally meant that as a simple lesson to teach her. He never knew on that terrible night, sitting beside a shunned woman in a champagne dress at a table everyone else avoided, that she would end up being the one who taught that kindness right back.